Hello, my name's Peter Wren from the I Wanna Believe channel and welcome to Paranormal Encounters. Get ready to journey into the mysterious and unsettling world of the paranormal. In this gripping show, Paranormal Encounters, we delve into the lives of those who have come face to face with the unexplained. Through candid and heartfelt conversations, we bring you the graphic, personal and emotional stories of paranormal witnesses, revealing the chilling realities that lie beyond the veil.
Hi, my name is Amber and I'm from British Columbia, Canada, and this is my story. I had not been long separated from my husband, the father of my children, and we were looking for a place to stay, and I came across the house that we lived in for a relatively short period of time. Not quite a year, and we had some pretty interesting experiences while we were there. Nothing really drew me to the house except for that it was available. They were willing to rent to me while I was a single mom of 3 small children, and I wasn't employed at the time. I was going to school. And so it was nice. They were nice people that allowed me to have a place to live. So when we first moved into the house, everything seemed fine, just like any other house that we had lived in. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary. We weren't in the house very long before I started noticing strange occurrences, and most of it happened with my 2-year-old. There was a couple things that along the way that happened to my older children as well as to myself, but it started mostly with my 2-year-old. I would put him to bed, and within 20 minutes, almost 20 minutes exactly, he would wake up crying and screaming for me, and this was unusual for him. And at first I thought, well, maybe it's because it's a new place and he's out of sorts, he's just small. But then it kept happening, and it was roughly exactly the same, like 15, 20 minutes, and I'd walk away and I'd settle down and he'd wake up screaming for me. And so I felt like there was an energy there that didn't belong. And so I had gone up to comfort him. He had fallen back asleep one more time. Go back downstairs again, 15, 20 minutes later, go back up, and he's screaming for me. And this is super out of character for him. And so I yelled loudly, just leave him alone. He's only a child, leave him alone. And when I did that, we had a walkie-talkie beside the bed on the floor. And when I did that, it made that walkie-talkie sound, that kind of sound. So that alone was pretty coincidental timing. So I picked it up to turn off the walkie-talkie, and it was off. It was not even on. So that was my first going, okay, well, what's happening here? And then again, with my 2-year-old, one morning we had woken up and he had asked to go downstairs, and it was relatively early in the morning, 7, 8-ish, and his 2 older siblings were still sleeping. He said, can I go downstairs and play? I said, yes. So we walked downstairs to play. And he started yelling, leave me alone, let me go, I want to see my mommy. So of course I jump out of bed, I go running downstairs, and he's standing at the bottom of the stairs all by himself. And I scooped him up in my arms, and we came upstairs, and I said, what was going on? What happened? And he says, that lady wouldn't let me come and see you. And I said, what lady? He goes, that lady downstairs wouldn't let me come and see you. So I left him in my room. I went downstairs. I checked all the doors and windows. They were all locked. There was a lady who was living downstairs in the basement, an older lady. And so I thought, well, maybe she'd come up, but that door is locked at the bottom and at the top. And you can only unlock it from our side or unlock it and vice versa. So there's nobody there. So that was a little concerning for me. We'd hear a lot of different noises in the house. So the kids all 3 of my kids would come to me and say yes. And I'd be like, what do you mean yes? They said, you called us. No, I didn't call you. And they say, yes, you did. We heard you. You said to come here. And I said, no, I didn't call you. So that went on quite a bit. Toys would go off all the time in the middle of the night. And they were toys that you had to interact with. So we would have this little stuffy toy that had buttons on the paws and the ears and the tummy and the feet. And it would say, can you find my tummy? And you'd have to push the tummy. And it would say, good job, that's my tummy. Or if you got it wrong, it would say, no, that's not my tummy, try again. And so that was constantly going on and off in the middle of the night when nobody was around, all the kids were sleeping. There's times that I could hear running going on upstairs. When I was downstairs, all the kids are supposed to be sleeping, and I could hear them running around, and it was loud. It was like a bunch of children running and loud. So I would sneak to go up there to get mad at them for not staying in bed, and they'd be sound asleep. They'd be sound asleep. I'd walk past the bathroom and, oh, they forgot to turn off the light. I'll go do this, and then I'll come back and turn off the light, and the light would be off. So I had a lot of that activity. Microwaves. So we went through, and light bulbs. We couldn't keep a microwave working in the house. So I always found that a little weird as well. We went through 3 microwaves in less than a year. They kept burning out. And same with the LED long-lasting light bulbs that are supposed to last, 15, 20 years. We were going through them every few months. Batteries were the same. Machines, the printer turning itself on and off. And then there is this one particular day where this was my deciding point. Like, I have to do something about this. Is we had... My older 2 were at school, and my youngest one, my 2.5-year-old, is in the separate room. I'm making lunch for us, and he's in the separate room playing with his little tools. He had a little plastic hammer and screwdriver and a little tool set for small children. And he was in there playing by himself, and he had said to me, those are my tools. Well, not to me. I had heard him say, those are my tools. Give me back my tools. And I'm listening and like, what's he talking about? So I was listening. He goes, give me back my tools. Those are my tools. And he's getting upset. So I walked into the other room where he was, and I said, what's going on? He says, that lady took my tools. I said, what lady? Because I'm not seeing anybody. And he said, that lady. And he pointed to somebody. So we went into a different room, and I sat down, and he's about 2.5 at this stage. And I said, what lady? And he said, the lady keeps taking my tools. And I said, well, what does she look like? And he said, nothing. So I prompted him, what color is her hair? And he said, black. And I said, okay. And I said, what color is her skin? And he said, orange. I'm like, okay, that's a little weird, but all right, we'll see where this goes. So what color are her eyes? And he got this really weird look on his face, and he just kind of big eyes, and he shook his head, and he had this nervous little laugh, and he said, she doesn't have any eyes. And I said, what do you mean she doesn't have any eyes? And he said, no, she has eyes. And I said, okay, well, what color are they? And he said, black. So that was when I knew, okay, something is going on. I'm going to have to for sure check this out. My kids had also come to me with different things. Like there'd be times that we would be sitting in front of the fireplace and the heat would be on and we'd have blankets on us and we could not get warm. We could not get warm. Things would go missing. I'd be like, who took this? Nobody had taken it. It was there one minute. It was gone the next. And then that is when that day was the one where I decided I need to call Vancouver Paranormal Society. Well, I needed to call somebody, and I Googled, and that's who came up, and I looked at the different websites, and that was who I felt comfortable calling. So I called them to help them come in and for me to figure out what was going on. So I liked their approach. I liked what I heard when I spoke to them. And so I did have a bit of a wait because there was a lot of people ahead of me. So in between then the phone call and when they actually were able to come to the house, which I think was 2 to 3 months, we had a lot of other activity happen. One particular time, I was sitting on my bed upstairs, And my bed is a big king-size bed with a very heavy, firm mattress on it. And it's a low platform, low-profile bed. So it doesn't really move very easily. It's heavy. And when I was sitting on it, it shook. Like the whole thing just shook. And I'm like, okay, did we just have another earthquake? Like, what's happening? And so I called my kids upstairs, and I just asked them to sit on the bed. And we sat there for a little bit, and nothing happened. So 2 of my 3 kids said, can we go back downstairs? And I said, yeah, absolutely, go back downstairs. But my middle one said, can I just stay up here and hang out with you? So I was on my bed studying. I was in school at the time. And he was working on his tablet, just playing on his tablet. And then the bed shook again. And he goes, and he sat right up. He goes, what was that? I'm like, okay, you felt that too, right? The whole bed just shook. And he's like, yeah, that was the weirdest thing. So occasionally it would do that. The day that the Paranormal Society did come to the house to investigate, I was vacuuming, getting the house ready. And while I was vacuuming, the upstairs light in the landing upstairs just turned itself off. So I went to turn to tell one of the children, turn that light back on, because you could only access it from upstairs in the landing. And they weren't there. They're downstairs watching TV. The one that probably, I'm going to use scare me, because it made me a little uneasy and a little bit nervous about what my 2.5-year-old was saying, and then what other things we experienced. But I knew, okay, that's fine. Like, these are just situations. But we're all safe. It's fine. Until I was sitting on my bed studying again, and I felt this burning on the back of my calf on my right leg. And it was burning, like hot burning. And I looked, and there was nothing there. And so I'm like, that's weird. And then I felt the burning on the back of my other leg. And again, I thought, what the heck's going on? Because it was this intense burning feeling and nothing there. So I'm like, that's really weird. Why is it burning? And as I'm looking at the back of my calves and nothing is there, it's just burning, this intense, deep burn. I watch 3 lines on my right calf show up, like if somebody had scratched me, and 2 were on my left on the back of my calves. And that's when I'm like, okay, this is not good, because if there is something here, which clearly, in my opinion, in my belief, there was something there with us. It was now bringing harm to us, which I'm not okay with. I'm fine with living with spirits or entities or whatever we want to call them, but I'm not okay with them bringing harm to us, just like we wouldn't want to bring harm to them. And that was a scary point for me. And we found that when we were in the house, we were bickering and fighting a lot. We'd go out of the house and it was fine. So there's something there that was drawing this negative energy from us. And toys would randomly go off. There was another time I was walking up the stairs at the end of a day to go to bed, and just out of the corner of my eye, I saw a little girl with a haircut kind of like my length, and it was brown. It was straight down. It was brown, just straight. And she was just standing there just by the slide. We had a little Tykes indoor slide. She was just standing there staring at me, watching. And so it was one of those things where you look and you're like, did I just see what I saw? And you try to make sense of it. You're like, no, it wasn't there. But it was there. It was there. We had a lot of minor little things. You would hear some doors closing, or you'd hear walking or running, and you're the only one there. You're the only one in the house. So you always felt like you were never alone. Things just didn't feel, it wasn't a good energy. My friends didn't really say too much. I would never have company for very long. I did notice that. So, they'd come and they go, okay, I've got a head now. I'm getting a headache, or I'm not feeling well. So I would never have company for very long. They didn't really say, sometimes they'd be like, oh, it's so freezing in here, but nobody really picked up on anything else. No, I didn't do any research to the house, but somebody had told me that in that area there was some issues, and they had experienced something at a different house, And they had said there was some sort of, I forget now if it was a fire or something in that area. I don't remember, so I don't want to speculate on that, because I didn't honestly remember exactly what they said. And this is going back to 2016 or into 2017. That was definitely not a positive entity. It was not something that was just cohabitating with us like, hey, we're all here, we might as well just be roomies and get along. It was not that situation. They were drawing energy from us to feed themselves, and I wasn't comfortable with that. So when the paranormal group came in and they did their investigation, during that time, there was nothing overly obvious while they were there. However, despite the furnace being on and the gas fireplaces being on, we ended up partway through the first investigation. Everybody had blankets. Everybody was freezing. Nobody could get cold. Well, warm, pardon me. Everybody was cold. Nobody could get warm despite the heat being on, registering at whatever it was, 27, 28. So there was that experience. And then when they got back to me with the evidence, they had captured audio from that evening, which validated what we were looking for, as well as at one point when we were all downstairs, there was a camera set up to face my bedroom. And at one point it started going crazy, snap, 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 snap. And I can't explain. It's just like a motion camera, I guess. I don't fully understand how the equipment works. And it started snapping. And in one of the pictures, it looked like something was laying on my bed. There was what looked like a divot, like something was lying there lengthwise on the bed. And then at another point, one of the REM pods upstairs had started going off when nobody was around it. So there's those things of which, was nice to have the validity that something was happening, that was not just, okay, we're hearing voices from the street, or you know what, your windows need replacing and that's why it's cold in here. So it was nice to know I wasn't crazy. Well, I probably still am crazy, but that's fine. So at one point, when we're doing the investigation, Peter Wren, who is part of the Paranormal Society, had come to my house to help with the investigation, but he had just traveled up. It'd been a long day. He had just got off work and he had left his work, came up and he said, hey, I've just worked all day and I've traveled up here from Kamloops. Do you mind if I have a quick shower before things proceed with the investigation? I said, no problem. I have to take my children out anyways, so I've got to go drop them off at their dad's because I don't want them here for this investigation. So I left. And then I took the kids to their dad's, who lives in Mission. It's 20 minutes away from us. And so when I dropped them off, I came back home and Peter had asked me, he's like, hey, after you left, did you come back right away or shortly thereafter? I'm like, no, we just went and I just quickly dropped them off and quickly came back because I didn't want to be late for the investigation. So no, I didn't come back. And he says, okay, well, the oddest thing had happened. I thought I had heard you come in and I called out and nobody answered. And I'm like, yes, I totally understand because that's happened to me plenty of times. I'm in the shower and I'm just like, wait, did I just hear a door open, a door close? So you listen and there's nobody there. And then he had picked up at this toy that we had. He said this toy was going crazy. And it was, I know what, because it's a toy that this entity really liked. It was one of those balls with those big nubs that shoot out of it, and it's got a little button that you've got to push to turn it on, and it shakes and it laughs and it giggles while it's shaking, and it's got all of these nubs coming off of it. So there's no way to just accidentally push a button. It wasn't even a push button. It was one you have to slide. And he had mentioned to me that was going crazy. It was just going off on itself. And so we had a lot of activity like that where it was just unexplainable. This toys just randomly went off, whether anybody was touching them, whether they had batteries in them. It didn't matter. So we did not stay in there too much longer. We did have one other investigation there, which didn't catch a lot. But we ended up moving for a couple of reasons. One, we're just no longer comfortable living there. The opportunity came up for us to stay there. The house was being sold, and the opportunity did come up that we could still stay there and still rent. But we took that as an opportunity to move, because the entity that was with us was not a safe one for us to live with.
My name is Linda Carino, and I've been a paranormal investigator for over 40 years. Amber's case is really interesting because there's a couple of things that really stand out. Well, I mean, there's more than a couple of things that stand out. First of all, she said that the house that they moved into when she was just separated and looking for a house, it was one that it just sort of came up. She needed a house. She needed someplace to go to quickly. And this was available. And the people were willing to rent to her and to her 3 small children. Very, very important. So she didn't really pick and choose the house that she moved into. This was readily available. So that's all interesting to me. It was there. Perfect. Everything seemed fine. Now, what she did say was the first thing was that her 2-year-old child noticed that something was going on. And she was a bit alarmed because this child would be put down to sleep and within 20 minutes would start screaming and crying and calling for her. And this was very out of character. Now, that's something to note because normally in active locations, children are the first things that tend to notice a subtle change in atmosphere or notice things happening. And things happen to children. The reason, of course, people say, well, it's because they're new souls. They haven't been here long, so they're still connected to the other world. Okay, case in point. But it could also be because children tend to see and experience frequencies that we as adults don't often see or don't necessarily see. So that, was a big exclamation point here. Children are sort of untainted by, sort of beliefs that are imposed upon them, any kind of moral norms. So they kind of, what you see is what you get. That's their attitude about most things. So I thought it was very interesting that this child would experience something that she didn't understand. But she did say that, yes, it was out of character. She did say that she felt in the house that there was an energy that didn't belong. And that's really important because most people in an environment that experiences a haunting will say that there's something wrong here. There's something that doesn't feel right. So your instincts tend to kick in very frequently when you're in an environment that says, okay, this isn't safe, or there's just something weird going on. So she obviously picked up on that. Her senses were kicking in that something wasn't quite right. Interestingly enough, she yelled, "Leave him alone," at that particular time. And there was a walkie-talkie in the room that made a noise even when it wasn't on. That's interesting because entities can play with all kinds of electronic equipment. And they can play with all kinds of electronics. Anything electrical, anything like a radio, a walkie-talkie, they are attracted to energy and they will play with all of these things. So that was an interesting thing. Another child saw a lady and he was crying, "Let me go, leave me alone," and said that the lady wouldn't let me come up and see you. That's interesting. She did say there was an older lady that was living in the basement, but she wasn't around at the time. So these children were seeing things and experiencing things that she didn't see. So that's an indication that something was certainly wrong. There were noises in the house. There were unexplained noises. And sometimes these noises mimicked her. The children were saying, yeah, well, you were calling me, but she really wasn't. So something was mimicking her in the house. And the toys were going off in the middle of the night. that's another indication that obviously something is wrong, and there's some entity, some spirit living in the home. And these were toys that you would have to interact with in order for them to go off. So when there was nobody around in the middle of the night and these toys were going off, it is a high indication that there is some kind of haunting activity taking place. There was running going on upstairs, noises, things like that. Now, noises, lights going off and on, things like that are very easy for entities to do. It's the other things that are not so easy for them to do. You always know when an energy is getting stronger, when it does things like reach out and pushes you or scratches you or something like that. So at the very beginning, obviously, the children were seeing things, but the lights were going off and on. And the microwave, they went through, I think she said 3 of them in less than a year, which was interesting. Light bulbs, the LED kind that are supposed to last for years, they kept going through them all the time. The batteries were running low. Entities are energy, and they feed off of energy. So it's not surprising that these things would be, depleting in energy rather quickly, because obviously whatever was there was trying to gain the strength to do something more than just easy things like loudly banging or footsteps or things like that. She said that the tipping point was that her 2.5-year-old was in the house with her alone, and said that, yelled and said, "Those are my tools. Give me back my tools. The lady took my tools." So she said, "Well, what lady are you talking about?" And he described the lady, black hair, orangey skin. And when she asked about the eyes, the indication was that she didn't have any eyes, or that the eyes were black. It's kind of like, that movie, The Ring, where that lady comes out of the out of the well, and then through the TV set, looking like that kind of thing. Obviously looking very frightening. Whatever it was interacting with the children. Now, sometimes more malevolent entities can look frightening, just because they want to look frightening. They want to scare you. They want to get a reaction out of you. So it could very well be that whatever it was certainly less than, a friendly ghost. It might have been very malevolent. It certainly, wanted to interact. There were things that happened in the house. They couldn't get warm. Things kept going missing. The good thing is that she did reach out to a paranormal team. And that's a very important note, because often when you are overwhelmed and things like this are happening to you, you think you're crazy. And reaching out to a paranormal team is fabulous, because they can get that validation for you, so that you know that you're not crazy. You know that there's something that's actually happening. She said that other things happened. Her bed shook, and that the day the investigators came over, she was vacuuming, and the landing lights, they turned themselves off. Yet you had to turn off the light at the top of the stairs, I believe she said. So there was no way that anybody was up there. And obviously they turned off by themselves. So whatever it was knew that something was going to be happening. So knew that it was sort of found out, and that the investigators were coming. Now, when I talked about the energy wanting to become stronger and stronger, the tipping point was, she felt a burning on her right calf and then on her other leg. And then she watched as 3 scratch lines showed up on her calf. That is very alarming. And that's when she realized that, okay, now it wants to harm us. And it was very scary for her. Absolutely. Sometimes, these things just happen because they want your attention. But sometimes, and you have to trust your instinct in these cases. She really did feel that the energy in the environment was getting worse. So her moods were fluctuating. There was bickering and fighting in the house. So obviously what it was trying to gain strength, and did gain enough strength to actually cause bodily harm. So there were interesting things that happened in the area. Apparently it was a very active area. Different houses had activity. That's a really interesting thing. But she did feel that it wasn't a positive entity. She felt that it was draining everyone's energy. That's very important to note. And during the investigation, of course, it was very, very cold. Again, it feeds on the ambient heat in the room, trying to gain that strength in order to do something or to manifest in some way. They did capture some audio during the investigation. The camera facing the bedroom, it does look like something is lying on the bed. That was really interesting. Investigator Peter Wren experienced something that he couldn't obviously explain. That light up toy that went crazy, that laughing and shaking ball, that really startled him, and he kind of wondered, like, what the heck is that? So again, unexplainable activity, all kinds of things happening. And she just, she needed to move. And I understand why she needed to move. Most people in that situation would need to move because they feel uncomfortable. And once it becomes unsafe, then they do need to flee. Thank you so much, Amber, for sharing your experiences. And honestly, that was quite a lot. There was so much there that I think we all need to pay attention to. But thank you.